Going into the NBA draft every single year, there's always 1 to 2 sleepers. But the player we're going to be talking about in today's video, I don't think sleeper is the right word for him. I think there's one word that perfectly describes him, and that word is confidential. For those of you that don't know, confidential, it means secret. The reason I'm not labeling this player as a quote-unquote sleeper is because I don't think he fits what a sleeper is. A sleeper is a team that you somewhat know about, but you just don't see them being successful. The main difference with this guy is that not too many people even know about him. There's some people that know about him and he has a great story, but if you're a casual fan, more than likely you don't know anything about him. One thing that is extremely fascinating about this kid is that there's some NBA teams out there that are in love with him and his game. But however, at the same time, those same NBA teams won't tell you too much about him because it's almost like they want to keep him to themselves. So that's why I'm labeling him confidential. I think he's easily one of the biggest secret weapons in all of this draft. And with the draft approaching us pretty soon, it leaves us with these questions. Who is this guy and what's going on? Meet Jason Preston. He played at Ohio for his college basketball career, and he has one of the most unbelievable stories you'll ever hear. I'm not going to go too into detail about his story because that's not what we're focusing on in today's video. I'll give you a very brief run through though, just so you get a perspective. Originally, he didn't even go to college to play basketball, and I believe he started out going to UCF first as just a student. Then out of nowhere, one of his friends needed an extra teammate for an AAU game, and he said he'd go. He was playing so good for that AAU team that a coach recognized him and knew he could be good, and the rest is history. He worked his way up and he got to Ohio, and that's where he showed out. One thing that I found, I guess you could say, weird about him is that last year he was getting a lot of attention, but at the same time he wasn't. What I mean by that is that people was talking about his story. They weren't really giving him credit for his basketball ability and how great he was. They were trying to make it seem like he was a one-hit wonder and it was just great for him to be at college and performing that good. But in the long run, when you look at it, he can be a great NBA player. It's really hard not to like this guy, and everybody loves his story, but let's not be sweet about this and let's get down to business. Can he and will he make it to the NBA? At the end of his season last year, he put his name in the NBA draft and he was just a junior, and some people thought that was a mistake. He's not a freak athlete, he doesn't do anything extraordinary well, he's just an overall smooth player. Most people thought he'd even return for his senior season, but he got invited to the draft combine, and that speaks a lot. Front offices all around the NBA were very intrigued by this guy, so they wanted to see more. Before the draft combine sent out invitations, he had multiple private workouts with a lot of teams, and he was so good in those workouts, and that's why he received the invitation. Getting an invite to the combine, it doesn't guarantee you're going to get drafted, but it helps you. It gives you a really good and another opportunity to prove to all these scouts that you can play. Before I go any farther, I do want to say this. In his first season at Ohio, he only averaged 6 points per game, but in his second year, he improved tremendously. He averaged 16.8 points per game. And then as a senior, it was the same. He averaged roughly 16 again. I just wanted to throw these stats at you real quick so you kind of get an idea of who we're talking about, and we'll talk more about them in the future. And his field goal percentages were very solid. He shot around 50%, and for the last 2 years of his college career, he shot roughly 40% from the three-point line. You probably noticed that in his sophomore year, he averaged more points per game than his senior year, but the only reason for that was because nobody even had a scouting report on him. They weren't double teaming him and they weren't playing help side defense, but by his junior year they knew he could hoop like that, so they started doubling a little more. And last year, which was his junior season, that's when he really started to make a name for himself. He helped his case a lot in March Madness because he led his team to the tournament and also upset Virginia. As good as that was for him and his team, the best part of his season was when he had a 31-point performance. Even though they lost in that performance, it was still amazing. His official stat line was 31 points, 8 assists, and 0 turnovers against Illinois. That was the game that literally put him on the radar as a legit prospect. We talked about his points per game and his averages and how he shoots from the field, but what impressed all these NBA scouts the most is his passing ability. Over the past 2 seasons, he's averaged over 7 assists per game, and he's one of the best purest passers anyone's ever seen. The best way to describe his game is that he's an offensive engineer. He runs the whole thing very smoothly. He's a very smart player, and I think he's a big shot maker, and he has the potential to be an all-star. I do want to talk on that and clarify that up a little because this may be a controversial statement. I think his ceiling and max as an NBA player is an all-star caliber player, I really do. At the same time, I also think he could be a complete bust and he could flop. He's a high risk and high reward player. He's either gonna be amazing or not so hot. What makes him even more dangerous and appealing is that he comes in at roughly 6'4", so he can see over the defense and control everything. Then to top that off, and I think this is why he's getting a little more buzz than normal, he has a long and huge wingspan that's bigger than most point guards. He does have some knocks on his game, so I'm not going to praise him completely. He's not the most explosive and athletic guard in the draft, but he makes up for that in many other things. He can control the pace of a game, and I think he could be a good 6-man on any team. And what I like about him the most is that he has a high basketball IQ. He doesn't take too many bad shots, but he will take a heat check every now and then. He's not going to lose you many games, so that's why I see him as maybe an all-star at max, but a very good bench player. He does have a unorthodox jump shot. It's not the smoothest one you'll ever see, but we've seen many players have strange jump shots, and it works for him, so it doesn't matter. It's not like he's shooting a terrible percentage from the 3-point line. I personally don't think there's anything wrong with his jump shot because it works, but I can agree that it's not Klay Thompson or Devin Booker. He's had a lot of workouts with numerous teams, but he recently had one with the Lakers and they were very impressed. What's odd about most of his workouts and any interactions with these teams is that they're not talking about him too much. Here's what I think is going on with him. These teams that do want him, or at least are interested in him, they know how good he is and they don't want him to get leaked out to other teams. He's the biggest secret in the draft because if you have the 40th, the 50th pick and he's still up there, I think those teams would take him. Unless something crazy happens, he's not going to go in the first round, but he could go as early as I'd say 35 and as late as 55. I do think he will get drafted because he continues to rise up all the mock drafts. You guys know how I am. I'm not too big on defense. I don't think it matters that much because offense is king nowadays, but that's what he does bring to the table that other point guards don't. With him being 6'4" and a very long wingspan that is not normal, he can defend any point guard. I would take a chance on him around the 40th to 50th mark because I think he can light it up on the offensive end and he can also play lockup on the defensive end. He's not just an offensive player. There's a lot of guys in this draft that if they're not having a good offensive night, they don't bring too much to the defensive end. According to sources around the league, they've been saying that he could go as early as 20th through 40. I don't really see a scenario, and I haven't seen one, of him going in the first round, but I wouldn't be shocked. He is a little older than some of the players in the draft, and some people think that's a bad thing, but I've also heard that NBA teams like a guy who went to college for a couple of years. So if you do want a 6-man that's almost a veteran from college, this is your guy. There is another knock on his game that I do need to bring up. He didn't play in one of the best conferences out there, so he didn't play the best of the best competition always. But then that argument is almost thrown out of the window because against Illinois, one of the best teams last year, he put up 31 points and 8 assists. Anytime you want to make a case and say something bad about Jason Preston, there's always another good one to bring up. He's definitely been rising up draft boards a lot and maybe more than even he expected because today he announced that he's going to stay in the NBA draft and sign with an agent. No, I'm not just making this video today because of that, it just happened to fall that way. I've been on plan making this video. And normally, if you don't know by now, when players decide to sign with an agent and stay in the draft, that means they're getting good feedback from the teams they're working out for. So more than likely they know they're getting drafted. It's not a for sure thing, but more than likely, I'd say 75%. Still, with all that being said, many people, not just fans, but NBA teams, don't know too much about him. He's not a big social media guy, he's not extremely famous. He's well known, but not like Sharif Cooper or some other guards. He's to himself and he's confidential and his game is confidential. And for all those reasons, I don't think he's the biggest sleeper. Don't call him a sleeper, because I think he's the biggest secret in this draft. Let me know what you think about Jason Preston. Would you draft him in the first or second round or not at all? But with all that being said, that's going to wrap up this video. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned something. If you're new to the channel, wait on. Join the family. Hit that subscribe button. Leave a like for more. And as always, let's be great. I'm out. Peace.